Shazam!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shazam Fear of the Gods. Well, I mean, not the actual movie of course, just a video about the movie. So Shazam Fear of the Gods was probably my most anticipated superhero movie of the year. From everything to the trailers and it being a sequel to one of the highest rated DCEU movies, though underrated, all things were looking positive. I was so positive going into this movie. I remember I was seeing people on Twitter talking negatively about the movie and I just agreed with them.
You what?
Before even seeing the movie. I didn't engage with them of course, that would be stupid. When I saw from the trailers, it looked like it was going to be a banger movie, and well, it's safe to say that I am majorly disappointed. I can't remember the last time I was this disappointed by a movie. I mean, I probably have to go back to 2017's Justice League or something like that, or that sorry excuse of a movie called Wonder Woman 1984. The only positive I can take away from this movie is the humor. Humor is obviously subjective, but I found it to be enjoyable and funny. The maybe only other positive for the movie is the colors. It's great to see movies that are not afraid to use colors, even if the world is about to end. I mean, whatever fits the tone of the movie of course. But yeah, the costume design is also really good, as well as seeing some of the famous creatures from Greek mythology like the Harpies, the Cyclops and the Minotaur of course. One thing I didn't like, and I see one thing, there were many things, but one thing I didn't like, and it didn't happen in this movie but the previous movie, and it is that I think David F. Sandberg gave the family powers too soon. I think Billy should have gotten an entire movie for himself, and then maybe a mid or end credit scene where Mary gets her powers. Too many people got their powers in my opinion, and I think even he realized it because he literally made everyone but Billy lose their powers in this movie. But that happens when you write yourself into a corner. So what I think they should have done is that Billy should have gotten his powers, and Mary, Mary Marvel, or whatever her name is, Mary Shazam, should have gotten her powers. Well, not in the first movie, but in the second movie or the end credit scene as I said. And then Shazam Jr. or Freddie Freeman. So 3 people should have maybe been Shazam, not like, what was it, 6 or 7 that are part of the family. Now let's talk about my actual problem with the movie. So this first problem is so noticeable you can't possibly miss it. And it is the disconnect between Billy Batson and Shazam. They are literally the same character, they should be acting the same, but you wouldn't think that during the movie because they act nothing alike. I dare say he has more wisdom as Billy Batson than he does when he turns into Shazam, who should indeed have the wisdom of Solomon. And then there's the huge disparity between when he's stupid and when he's not stupid, like with Anne. When he saw the name Athia, he instantly figured out that Athia was Anne after only hearing the name once, but for some reason he can't read or pronounce the name Solomon, but instead read it as Soloman.
That's funny.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I laughed at the joke, but I didn't like how stupid they made him. I know, as well as you do, that almost 18-year-old Billy Batson can read. But yeah, some jokes also lasted a little too long, especially when they were writing that letter and she just continued to read and didn't understand what they were saying, but it lasted a little too long in my opinion. Now moving on to the visual effects, some of it just looks really cheap despite this sequel costing about 20 to 35 million more than the first one, which has really good visual effects in my opinion. And the poor visual effects are mostly linked to the flying in my opinion. It just looks like they're flying in front of a green screen, because that huge dragon looked really good in my opinion. And the reality bending powers of Athia, which are far too underused, also look really good. Here's another huge issue I have with the movie, and it is the absolute horrible written dialogue of the goddesses. These goddesses are thousands of years old, but they act like they aren't a day over 10. You would think living for thousands of years would give you some kind of cohesion when it comes to dialogue, but no. They have horrible and sometimes cringe-inducing dialogue, especially the oldest of the goddesses. The one who acts most like an ancient being is Athia, the youngest of the 3. I just don't understand, man. I mean, I think they should have gotten a different writer for this movie, honestly, because the direction isn't horrible, but the dialogue just isn't there. This next complaint complements my previous point, and it is that the villains were pretty weak. Not as in power levels, even though they were pretty weak, but as in just bad. Yes, they can easily destroy regular humans, but none of them seem particularly powerful either. The sisters also had completely different motives. In my opinion, either Athia should have been the main villain, or what I would have preferred was that Mr. Mind became the main villain. The weak story surely didn't help either. At least their reality bending powers would have made the movie a little more unique, but as I said, they were very underused. I think she used them like 2 or 3 times during the entire movie. Being on the topic of Athia, how come no one questioned the relationship between a many thousand-year-old goddess and a 17-year-old boy? They just made a joke about it, but hey, she looks like a teenager, so I guess it's okay. I just found it ridiculous and way too rushed, that relationship, and the way he was obsessed with her was quite frankly upsetting. I'm going to say something here that might be seen as appearance shaming, but rarely do you see a woman dating below her or dating down. I guess she is a goddess, so her mindset is completely different to that of a human, and maybe humor is the way to go. But still, the age gap will always be weird, and everyone accepting it was also weird. It's like if Billy actually got to date Wonder Woman. That shit would be batshit insane. I get that, you know, boys having crushes on older women, especially if she's a super good looking superhero, alright? But them actually being together would be weird. The biggest crime that this movie committed was having a mid and post credit scene that we won't ever get to see the results of, with the movie being a box office bomb and James Gunn's new DCEU reboot. We probably won't ever get to see another Shazam movie for a long time. So that means that the Mr. Mind setup is null and void. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get to see a version of Shazam in other projects, as someone shoehorned Harcourt and Economos into a post-credit scene, but it will definitely not be the same actor. But I don't know, if season 2 of Peacemaker ever gets made, how will it fit into the new DCEU, because the characters are going to be rebooted, unless he somehow has managed to use the Flash as a gateway to use previous characters, but I don't know. He could still use some of the same characters, just in a new continuity, so he just reboots the characters, and what they did previously does no longer exist. But that doesn't explain Harcourt and Economos trying to recruit Shazam for the JSA if there's going to be no payoff. Of course, the JSA can still appear in their own rebooted movie with Shazam in it, in the new DCU, and it would have nothing to do with the DCEU/Black Adam JSA. And speaking of Black Adam, there was no connection to that movie other than the JSA, but I guess we all know who to blame there. But hey, Black Adam somehow turned out to be the better of the 2 movies. I would rate this movie about 5 out of 10, maybe 5.5 out of 10. It was highly, aggressively mediocre.
Alright, here's the situation. We have one more job to do, and that's to keep this bridge from collapsing.
The Ben Franklin Bridge has collapsed.